Today, we're going to learn how to pass AWS Machine Learning Specialty exam. This is a really difficult exam, but I will help you to go through it. We will learn step by step what you will need to learn, which documentation and materials you need, and actually what it takes to achieve it. Let's go. So first, the basics. So the exam consists of 60 questions about AWS services and machine learning theory. So there is no coding questions, and you don't need to know Python, but it surely helps. And it also helps if you already work in the industry, already work with AWS machine learning services, especially SageMaker. So you need 75% to pass, and this is very difficult. So I personally passed with 94%, but it took me a lot of time to prepare. There are two kind of questions. So first, single choice, and the second is multiple choice. So if you are told how many to choose, it's multiple choice. You usually are told that you have to choose 2 or 3 answers. Overall, you have 3 hours, and it is actually more than enough. Usually 2 hours is actually enough. So the exam costs money, so it's $300. So I will later explain what exactly you need to learn and what materials you need. But first, let's go to the tips. So tips part 1. So first, you need a lot of time. You need approximately 150 hours of pure concentration, of pure focus, or more if you're not familiar with AWS and machine learning theory. It took me about 2 months, and I already knew both. I already knew machine learning theory, and I knew how to deal with SageMaker. So if you are a newbie, take 3 months, maybe 4 months, but take your time. Second, take a couple of deep dive courses on machine learning. So 50% of the exam questions are not related to AWS at all. They are pure machine learning theory. Otherwise, read and understand all the materials I list. I will provide you with all of the links, with all documentation you need, with all the theory, machine learning theory you need. So third, know SageMaker documentation very, very well, even the small details. It's a lot to memorize actually. So as you can see, here's Amazon SageMaker documentation, and you actually have to know it really, really well. And it's not enough to just read it 2 or 3 times. You have to actually memorize a lot of stuff here. Like for example, SageMaker algorithms. You have to memorize what type of input an algorithm take, what instances are the best to choose for a specific algorithm. And the fourth, take notes. So Google Docs are really helpful because at the end of the day, like before the exam, like one week before the exam, it's really good to take all of the notes and refresh everything several times, because you will need to remember all of the small details in, for example, SageMaker documentation. Tips part number 2. So fifth, find practice tests and score at least 80%, 100% on them. Yeah, you can find them just by Googling. So the reason I put this 80% and 100% as a baseline, because the exam baseline is 75%, but the exam practice test, which you can find on the internet, are usually not as hard. So that's why you need to score a little bit higher than the baseline of 75%. You can also check official sample question and take an official practice test on the AWS Machine Learning exam website. So here you can go to the website and download the sample questions. There are 10 questions and answers for them. And you can schedule the exam, and there you go to the certification console and you can schedule the practice exam, which costs, as you can see, $40 instead of $300, but also the amount of questions is much less. I believe it's 20. Okay. So go through the code on SageMaker algorithms. It's very important that you actually understand what happens inside, so you don't need to know any Python code, but it really helps to solidify the knowledge. So here you can choose, like for example, XGBoost, which is one of the SageMaker algorithms. So it doesn't belong to SageMaker, it's just you can use it there because XGBoost is open source. For example, here predict the customer churn, and take at least, for every algorithm in SageMaker, take at least one notebook, and yeah, and just go through it and see what it is. And for example, here, introduction to LDA algorithm, and just go through it and solidify your knowledge. So repeat everything before the exam several times. Again, for that you need your notes. And also remember this blog post link with all the preparation materials. So here is on the simpledataflow.com website. It's how to pass machine learning specialty exam. And basically here you have all the information, all of the links you have for this to pass this exam. But we will return to it a little bit later on. So the exam consists of 4 parts. One of the parts is data engineering, is 20% of the exam questions, and here we have to know basically only AWS services, no theory. And here I have listed all of the services you need to have a good understanding of. And here in the blog post I also made all of the links. You have to, you can go through them and read the documentation about the services and understand what they're doing. For example, S3 is the simple storage service, which is used, for storage for any type of object. And here I also list the features that you have to pay close attention to, because there is a high chance you will be asked these questions on the exam. I will not go through every service here, because this is not the point of this video. The point of this video is to make you aware what you have to learn, and then you go to the blog post and read all of the documentation yourself, So for example, Kinesis family, there's a set of services which allow you, for example, to inject data at near real time, what Kinesis Data Firehouse does. So the next one is, for example, AWS Glue, which is ATL service. You have to know about database, Elastic MapReduce, Athena, and AWS Step Functions. Also be prepared for this kind of questions: which services are serverless and which are not, because the common question on the exam is which solution requires the least effort to do something. And here it means that you have to choose serverless service. For example, AWS Glue can do ATL, and also Elastic MapReduce can also do ATL, but only Glue is a serverless service. Okay, that was data engineering. Take your time, go through all the documentation. That's a lot of stuff to learn. The next section is exploratory data analysis, and here you need to know mostly the theory and also one AWS service, which is QuickSight. Again, all of the materials you need available in a blog post. For example, here you can go here and open the link, which will refer you to certain article in the internet where you can read about data types. So for example, here, this is a popular blog on medium.com. It's called Tower Data Science, and they answer a lot of questions here. So the only thing is that they try to monetize their blog post, and sometimes you have to log in, for example. But the way to do with this is just open it in a private window of your browser, so you will not have any restrictions and you can read it no problem without logging in. You have to know types of data, data distributions, trend seasonality and noise in time series data, which is all available in the article set list here. You have to know term frequency versus document frequency, and here we expected to know how to calculate it. Wikipedia article on how to do it is pretty straightforward. Then you have to know how to work with data, for example, handling missing data, handling unbalanced data, what to do with outliers, and do transformations on the data. You have to know things like types of encoding, for example, what is one-hot encoding, how to do normalization and standardization, and what do you need shuffling for. And also you need to have a good understanding of different kind of plots, for example, what scatter plots are good for, which is detecting outliers. You also need to know about QuickSight, which is Amazon service for business intelligence, which creates a lot of dashboards from your data and which is helpful for like business analysis people. You don't have to be a developer to use it actually. Okay, this is exploratory data analysis. The next section is modeling, which is the biggest section of the exam, takes 36%. And here you have to know a lot. You need to know both theory and AWS services. And again, everything is available in a blog post. So here you have to know standard machine learning algorithms. You have to have understanding of like things like linear regression, logistic regression, support vector machines, and other standard machine learning algorithms. You also need to learn an understanding of deep learning, but you don't have to know like things like transformers, for example. You need to learn like basics like feed-forward networks, recurrent and convolutional networks. You need to have understanding on activation functions and where to use which one, for example, where to use softmax and where to use, for example, sigmoid. There is not a lot of cases to use sigmoid for, but you know, here's an article explaining everything. You also need to learn hyperparameters, especially learning rate and batch size and how they correlate. I have not encountered the question about optimizers, but it's good to know about it as well because it's the essential part of, you know, of machine learning. So you have to know about overfitting and underfitting problems and how to avoid them. For example, how to detect overfitting, which is, I make examples here. Overfitting happens when your model learns too much from the trained data and it doesn't generalize very well. And underfitting is the opposite situation when your model is simple and it cannot distinguish anything on trained or on test data. You have to know regularization. And for example, L1, L2 regularization, what is dropout, and also you need to know, when you need to train for more time, when your model underfits, and when you need just to get more data. For example, when it's overfitting, getting more data is not helpful in all cases. It helps when your model is too complex. So getting more data helps to generalize it better. How to use data augmentation, it's very popular in image analysis. So the next one is vanishing and exploding gradient problems. Again, the article is there. The next one is the most important, about the theory, because here you will have to know how to calculate certain things. So first you need to know what is confusion matrix is and the following metrics, which is accuracy, recall, precision, and etc. And you need to know how to calculate them and how to interpret them. For example, in which case to maximize which metric. For example, precision is good for spam detection and recall for fraud detection. Also link all the articles with deep explanations. And again, so given the confusion metrics, you need to know how to calculate certain metrics. And also I link the example question from AWS machine learning exam page. You need to know also evaluation metrics, residual plots, ensemble methods, and basics of NLP. But I also have part about services. So services, basically you have to know about SageMaker. And again, you need to know SageMaker documentation, really, really well. It's a lot to learn, but you will have a lot of questions about SageMaker. Please pay close attention to SageMaker algorithms. For example, here for built-in algorithms, you will find all of the algorithms available in SageMaker, and you have to know basically everything about them. So you have to read. You don't need to know, implementation details, how to implement them in Python. But it's good to have that knowledge as well. We talked about having understanding on how to implement it in Python really helps to solidify your knowledge. And here you need to learn everything. There is every single detail. And also pay attention to some of the pages I list here. And yeah, again, go through at least one Jupyter notebook on GitHub here, which I showed you. It helps, believe me. Okay, besides SageMaker, there is also high-level machine learning APIs. You can find them in the documentation, and you need to have basically a high-level understanding and certain features about the high-level machine learning APIs. For example, if you can take like Poly, which is a service which converts text into speech, and you need to know its features. For example, you need to know what are lexicons, what are speech marks, etc. And the last one is how to build small systems with high-level machine learning APIs. For example, how to build translation service. You can use Transcribe, translation, and Poly. You don't need to know exactly how they would implement, but in the exam you will have questions. For example, a certain situation where, for example, customer asks you to do a certain service, and then you will have to use these high-level machine learning APIs to build it, and there is, for example, 4 answers, and you have to choose which one. But these questions are usually pretty easy pretty straightforward. Yeah, and this is the biggest section of the exam, which is modeling. The last part of the exam is machine learning implementation and operations. And here we have to know about Docker and how it works with SageMaker. Again, everything in a blog post. So here I'll link all of the documentation that you need to go through. For example, Docker and SageMaker, how they work together. You also need to know how to use certain commands, to run your own SageMaker containers. The next one is inference on SageMaker. Again, learn very well. Pay close attention to the stuff I mentioned here. Example, production variants, SageMaker Neo, elastic inference, and so forth. You also have to know how to use spot instances. It's actually really good to know, just, if you work with SageMaker, it's a good knowledge anyway, so not only for the exam. Then security and monitoring, pay close attention to the following pages. And especially it's very important that you understand virtual private cloud and how it works with SageMaker, SageMaker notebooks, and S3. And the last one is distributed training. And here I'll link the blog post how to do it with a framework called Haravot. Okay. Additional information. So if you are not native English speaker, you can request 30 additional minutes on your exam. I think it's not really necessary, but it's free. Why not? If you pass the exam, the next exam discount will be 50%. For example, you pass the exam on machine learning and then you want to do, for example, DevOps or something else. Again, the blog post here contains everything you need to know about this exam with all the links, with all the information, materials you need. I wish you all the success and thank you very much for your attention.